I want to welcome you, Zane Truscott here, and I've been really enjoying these Friday live streams. I think this is perhaps our fourth one now, and getting some good feedback, and it's just an opportunity for me to share some insight and some tips and information, I guess, that can help you in your health and life journey. As you will probably know, for the past 15 years, I've been very much at the coalface, running live events with people like Don Tolman, going across this great country of ours, and really, getting to understand a lot of the challenges that people face, particularly in their health. And one of the things I've found is that probably the biggest hurdle for most people is that they can't really get on any real consistency when they're looking to make positive change. So, this morning what I thought I would do was just chat for maybe 30, 45 minutes just about this topic of momentum and why it's so important, and why I guess in some respects it's the Holy Grail that we all search for when it comes to living a great life. And as the great Don Tolman has taught for many, many years, there are 5 aspects to the human experience, which anciently they understood and knew in the Latin as the Citius, Altius, Fortius, Socius, and Moneta. And it basically referred to 5 aspects, which is our mental, our physical, our emotional, our social relationships, and of course, our financial well-being as well. And so, when you look at those 5 aspects, you really begin to understand that if we're going to have a great life and a fulfilling life, and one that really energizes us, then we need to have some balance around those 5 things. So this morning I'm going to just kind of delve a little bit into momentum, how it's helped me in different times of my life, how I've gone from a place of feeling really stuck and like, the mountain seems really high for me to climb, and I've managed to get myself up and rolling and moving towards my goals. So I'll be talking a little bit about that, and we're going to define momentum and what it actually means and why it's so important. And I think you'll see why once you understand the definition of it. And then I want to dive into the 4 main things that holds us back when it comes to creating anything great in our life. So we're going to touch on those 4 things. And then I'm going to finish with 7 key steps that have helped me over the years, and I think can help you to create momentum in your life as well. So firstly, I like to refer to momentum as the engine room of success, because, it's really easy for us to make a decision to do something for it could be our physical health, it could be to lose weight, it could be to get off a medication. It could be to, make some improvements to our relationship, to our career, to our finances. And, inside all of those things, there are, thousands of little mini steps that you and I can take on a daily basis. The real question is, what are the obstacles that are holding us back from taking those steps on a consistent basis? Because it's one thing for us to, say, hey, I want to lose 10 kilos, or I want to get off, thyroxine, for example, which is a really popular medication a lot of middle-aged women are taking these days, and they're told that they should be on it for the rest of their life, unfortunately, by their doctors. But, over the years, I've got to really understand, what happens to people's psyche as they get labeled and as they start becoming defined by so-called experts. And so, we have to become really acutely dialed into our own self-responsibility and our own self-care, and how it is that we can not only take these steps once, but believe in that direction enough for us to repeat and repeat and repeat until such time as it becomes subconscious, it becomes second nature. It becomes a part of who we are, our new identity. And that can be a struggle. It can be a struggle if you're, suffering from an environment that doesn't work, if you're listening to too many outside forces, and if you just don't know what to do. And they're the three main reasons why it's really difficult for us at times to step into those positive changes and to actually make them a part of our life. So as I said, momentum's the engine room of success. Now for me, there's probably three main events or times in my life where I felt like I was at a really difficult place. I felt like I was at a crossroads, and I needed to make a change. And the first time was when I failed my senior year at school. And, at the time, I didn't realize that, sitting up the back of the room and throwing paper aeroplanes and always being late for class and spending half my life in the headmaster's office, I didn't realize that the outcome of that, when I got to the end, would actually be that, I had no future, and of course that was the way I thought of it back then when I was, 16, 17 years old. And, I grew up in a very entrepreneurial family, and my mum and my dad separated when I was 8 years old, but they were both very, very entrepreneurial, and they went on to do, to do their own businesses and create their own things. And that had a big rub-off effect on myself and also my brother. But, at the time, what I felt for me, the pathway for my life was going to be that I needed to go to university, get a degree, have some strings to my bow so that I could go out and, create a career and everything that kind of follows on from that. And when I got to the end of my year 12 in 1989, I was very, very disappointed and disheartened to discover that there was no degree on the map whatsoever that I could get into at university. And here I was, I just spent, 6 years at one of, Brisbane's most established and well-known private schools. And, a lot of academics, a lot of high-level sporting people came out of that school. And, here I was watching my mates who I'd spent the last 5-6 years hanging out with, all trot off to university. Most of them got into the degrees that they wanted to. And I felt like a total failure. And I had to make a decision from that source of pain to actually, get the hell out of that state. So what was I going to do about it? What was I going to do to change and take responsibility for all the shit that I'd been getting up to that had caused that outcome? And I was fortunate. My mum and dad gave me an opportunity to repeat year 12. And so I went back with a renewed focus and a resolve that I was going to make a change. And so the following year in 1990, I, went forward with a clean slate in my mind, and also, literally as well. And I decided I was going to work on my physical body. I was going to be really focused at what I was doing at school. I was going to not play up, not be the class clown, and I was going to get the result. And, it's interesting when you go through life and you have moments that, deeply affect you, what you can do when you resolve to actually draw a line in the sand and say, hey, no more, that's not me anymore. And I'm better than that. And when you start to believe in yourself and you've got the courage to step into that unknown future, it's amazing how life and the universe just conspires to deliver the outcome that you want. And so that was the first moment. And I when I finished year 12 in my second year, I was actually, I was able to pretty much get into anything at university other than law or medicine. I think I got a TE score of 940, highest was 990. So I proved to myself that I was capable of, focusing, committing, giving it my all. And there was something that stayed with me throughout my life. I basically got through my degree, my marketing degree, inside 3 years. Meanwhile, a lot of my friends were deferring, or they were, finding themselves going back to the family farm, and, they'd taken on degrees that were like 5-year degrees in law or optometry, things like that, which weren't really deep within something that they wanted to do, but they kind of felt that that's what they had to do at 17 years old. That was the decision they had to make for their life. But it was very interesting for me just to watch all that play out, and how, meanwhile, everyone around me seemingly was not able to complete their degrees, or they're feeling disillusioned about what they'd chosen. Meanwhile, I caught up and I skated through, went overseas, and ended up living overseas and working overseas for 2 years, and came back. And got involved in the family business. The rest is history. But the whole point is that when we resolve, when the pain is great, and we choose that it's time for us to embrace courage and fear and to step into the unknown, amazing things start to happen, particularly when we focus and we commit. The second time was about a year later. I was king hit at a party. We were in a very compromising place. It was actually someone's home, and it just, things got out of hand. There were people who came into the party that weren't invited, and here we were. I think this is 1991. Things were different back then. There was not a lot of surveillance around, and I got king hit at a party from behind. I was not very conscious of the danger and what was transpiring in front of me. And out of that moment, I decided to get involved in martial arts, not just so that I could physically take care of myself, but so that I could really just boost my awareness and my consciousness around, threats and how I could manage those situations better. And, I had 2 long stints involved in martial arts. 20 years later, I was able to get my 2nd degree black belt. So, I think it was about 10 years between me getting my black belt and my 2nd degree black belt. But the point is that I learned so much about discipline and about staying the course and about consistently showing up through that process. And again, out of a painful moment, out of a resolve that I didn't want that to be, I don't want to put myself in a compromising, high-risk situation anymore. And so I felt like I owed it to myself to be able to take care of myself better. And so that's why I stepped into that. And then the third big moment for me was when my first business venture failed miserably, owed quite a bit of money. I was 29 at the time, had 3 children under the age of 5 by that stage. And I was very fortunate that I had an amazing woman next to me, my wife Inga, who still to this day is just my rock when it comes to difficult moments. But, through a resolve, again, that we knew that it wasn't the end, that failure didn't have to be fatal, that we had an opportunity to learn from the experience and to take what we'd learned and to move forward and to create something for ourselves and our family is what stood us in good stead. And we were able to, about 3 or 4 years later, hook up with Don, and we ended up pretty much building his brand in Australia. And we went out for 15 years and really helped him to spread his message of whole foods and medicine, whole food medicine and natural health and self-care and all of that. But it just highlighted to me that both personally and professionally, these principles apply. And so much of what we create in our lives that is great comes out of difficult moments. So they were the big things for me, but always it comes down to our belief and our ability to embrace courage. And all that courage is fear when we actually embrace it. So, too many times we let fear stop us, fear of the unknown, fear that we're not enough, fear that it's not going to work out. What if I'm not going to be loved? What if, I'm going to look silly? What if I lose everything? And all of those things are legitimate concerns that come up for us in our lives. But, the acronym for fear is, of course, false evidence appearing real, or fuck everything and run. You know what I'm saying? But the thing is that fear is just an illusion. And when bad things can happen and you step in anyway because you have a resolve and you have a belief that, that you're big enough to handle whatever comes your way, that's what true courage is about. And I don't know about you, but, I'm really, really clear that nothing in this world that is truly great, comes without some form of courage or risk. And, we all know people around us who just kind of live for today and live for the weekend and that's fine. And if you want to just live an average life, that's fine. But I know that's not who I'm talking to on this page in my community. But the point is that we all have within us greatness, and it's only our environment, our habits, and what it is that we've allowed ourselves to become accustomed to over time, that is really what either dictates or defines change in our life. So it can either define our destiny in a good way, or it can define our destiny in a bad way. It can allow us to kind of, leaving this earth with the music still inside of us. And I think that that's such a tragedy. There's an awesome speaker in America, what's his name? I'm trying to think of his name, but he said, the wealthiest people on earth are the ones that are in the graveyard, who didn't live their dreams. And it's because we all have these wonderful, lofty ambitions when we're kids inside of us, and then somehow we get through time and space, and the experience of life just tends to dismantle a lot of that out of us, and we cultivate fear, and we don't know how to overcome these difficult emotions and everything that life throws at us. So courage is just so important when it comes to getting through obstacles, realizing that we are so much better than what we believe and that we tell ourselves, and all of that is very foundational when it comes to creating momentum in our life, just having that resolve and that mindset around it. So scientifically, momentum is, it's really defined as mass in motion. And it's basically made up of two components, and that is matter and velocity. And so if you think about it, matter can refer to anything. It can be this water bottle. It can be an idea in your head. It can be some kind of subject or object. But without any kind of forward momentum, without any life force, that idea or that thing, won't go anywhere. And so this is the fundamental thing. This is where most people get stuck. If you are, have been told by your doctor, for example, that you're a diabetic and you need to be on insulin for the rest of your life, if you allow yourself to succumb to that identity and you have that reinforced time and time again, every time you go back for a checkup to the doctor, it's not going to take long for that to infiltrate who you are, infiltrate your psyche, and it obviously dictates all of the habits that you take day in, day out, year after year. And you wake up one day and you realize, well, one of two things happen. It's the beginning of the end for you and your life and what you're truly capable of, or you get to a point where you just decide that enough's enough and you're going to be more self-responsible. And so, it's just so important that we understand that without velocity, without forward movement, without energy attached to some idea that we want to make that change, or that we want to create financial freedom, or that we want better health, we want to lose weight, those things are all ideas that we've all had. Millions of people have those ideas every single day. But the difference is those that have the courage to step into those ideas with a basic plan, and they're able to follow through. And so this whole game is not about strategy. It's not about strategy. There's no shortage of strategies for what you and I would need to do if we want to lose 20 kilos. I mean, it's pretty obvious. It's just, it's basic physics. We know what to do. The question is psychology. That's the 80%. That's the thing that's really going to dictate whether we're able to make that change. And not just dabble, not just dabble. So many times people dabble and they don't get the result, and so they give up. And so, we all know people who have decided they want to get fit. They go and sign up for a gym membership. They get their card, sits in their wallet. They might go once or twice first week. Next week they might go once, or they might go gung-ho for, they may go gung-ho for a month, and then, something sets them back into their old ways. And then, that's not how you create momentum. The only way you create momentum is that whatever it is that you're trying to create, it becomes as I guess, consistent and to some extent mundane as brushing your teeth. It becomes something that you just do every single day. So momentum, you need two parts. You need the idea, but then you also need to give it the energy and the life force. And so I'm going to be giving you some tips for how we create that energy and life force in the seven tips. The beautiful thing about momentum is that once you have it, once you have momentum, it is very, very difficult to stop. It is difficult to start. You know, the first time I walked into a karate, a Zendukai dojo back in 1991, you know, it was a pretty daunting prospect. And back in those days, it was a pretty brutal style in martial arts. And for me to walk in there as kind of this timid kid and to be surrounded by these, you know, incredible specimens of, you know, fighters and you know, just incredible athletes and really, really tough guys. It took me some time to become comfortable in that environment. But if I didn't have the resolve, if I didn't have the reason to step into that, I never would have done it. And it was the reason that kept me going back, you know, that second time and that third time and that fourth time. And then pretty soon it just became a part of me. And I was, you know, I could go to a function or a party with these guys and I just felt like I was a part of them, even though, you know, we had different interests and things in common that weren't in common outside of the dojo. I was able to relate to those guys in a very specific way. And so, you know, just realizing that, you know, things are hard to start with. They are often very difficult. And that's where, you know, having the reasons to change becomes so important. So, just got a few notes here so that I stay on track for you. But there's a gentleman in America. His name's Rory Vaden. He's a Hall of Fame speaker, and I resonate with a lot with what he says. He talks a lot about procrastination. He wrote a book, a New York Times bestseller called "Take the Stairs," and I'm actually getting some coaching with some of his team right now. But one of the things that Rory teaches is he loves the statement that easy short-term habits create difficult long-term outcomes. And conversely, difficult short-term habits create easy long-term outcomes. And I don't know about you, but if I was to apply that statement to your health, or any of the thousands of people who have come along to our programs with Don over the years, who are in search of better health solutions and you know, alternative solutions to the medical methodology, you know, just to have that statement in your toolkit and to realize that the more that we embrace the difficult things today, the more we're going to have the pleasurable things tomorrow. It's really the pain pleasure paradigm of life. And too many of us today have lost the ability to delay gratification, and it's costing us. You know, it's costing us because we're addicted to comfort. And, you know, I believe that we can have comfort and pleasure and joy as well as doing all the difficult things we need to do. I believe that life has room for both. But if we spend our time just immersed in everything that's comfortable and we're not disrupting our subconscious habits and constantly, you know, trying to make ourselves better, then for me, that's not a great place to be, because, you know, one of the things that we all thrive on as human beings is making forward progress all of the time. Because if we're not constantly growing, we just start to lose our mojo. We start to lose our, you know, sense of achievement, sense of joy, sense of purpose in life. So, yeah, easy short-term habits create difficult long-term outcomes, and difficult short-term habits cultivate easy long-term outcomes. So for those of you who, you know, are trying to take a big leap with your health, it could be physical, it could be emotional, it could be mental. Just, you need to realize that more of the things that you embrace today that are a little more challenging, the more it's going to pay off for you down the track. But the more you stay in your comfort zone with all of that, the more pain and the more price you're going to pay down the track. So very, very important that we have that insight and we have access to that. So the four main forces that really stop us from creating any kind of forward momentum in our life is what I like to refer to as our radio frequency. And our radio frequency is basically everything that we say to ourselves about ourselves when no one else is around. It's also what we expose ourselves to on a daily basis that we allow to create the atmosphere around our emotions and around our mind. And there are four things that really have a massive impact on this atmosphere. The first is our past. Our past. Now, our past is our past. It's not our future. Our past is there for us to learn from. The problem is that too many people are heading forward through life looking in the rearview mirror. And it's impossible to do that. You can't drive your car down the road looking through the rearview mirror without eventually, crashing. And it's the same in our life. We need to use all of what's happened to us in the past, all the positives, all the negatives, all the challenges, all the pitfalls, all the struggles, all the pain. We need to use that as fuel to create this forward momentum in our life, to take the life lessons and to use that as the impetus for us to move forward. So just realize that our past is our past. It's not our present and it's not our future. Our present is our gift. The present is a gift. That's where the word present comes from. It is a gift. And it's more of a gift when we learn from what happened yesterday and we can move forward with the lessons of our past. So number one is past. Number two is our addictions. Our addictions. Now, we're either addicted to comfort, we're addicted to medication, we're addicted to fast food, we're addicted to social media, we're addicted to alcohol, we're addicted to a lot of things, and we're an addicted society by and large. And the thing is that everything around us is basically serving up the ability for us to be addicted on a platter. You go to the supermarket, 95% of what you see on the shelf contains addictive substances, inflammatory foods, food additives, processed, refined, this and that. Everything is against us. And so with consciousness, we're able to move away from our addictions. If we're not conscious, we're not disrupting our subconscious habits, then we're always going to stay in that addicted frame of mind because the whole world is conspiring for us to be addicted and so that we can fulfill whatever agenda is at stake here. So addictions are the other thing that hold us back. So we need to be really acutely dialed into what are those habits that are a part of us on a daily basis, and which ones can we easily disrupt with a little conscious thought and turn into positive addictions. Fears, I spoke about that a little earlier, so I'm not going to go into that too much, but just realizing that fear is never fatal, or failure is never fatal, and the only reason why we're fearful, two greatest fears we have, is that fear that we're not enough, or fear that we won't be loved. And the fear that we're not enough comes out of us fearing that things won't work out the way that we want them to work out. And so, just realizing that it's just an illusion and that there's nothing to fear. There's never failure. There's only experience and lessons that can be learned, and reframing our whole perspective around fear is the tip and the insight that I'd give you there. But just realizing that fears play a massive role subconsciously in our ability to move forward with momentum. Opinions, this is a huge one, particularly these days where, we're not just exposed to the opinions of our spouse or our brother or our mother or our sister. Now we're exposed to the opinions of, the world. We've got access at our fingertips to so many different opinions on so many different things, and none more so than in the area of health. I mean, everybody's got an opinion. There's so much conflicting information. There's so much overwhelm. There's not a shortage of information. There's just a shortage of really good information out there. And so, again, this is a huge roadblock that if you're not acutely dialed into, can very much, you can end up down the wrong path because you're just subscribing to everybody's opinions and you're allowing your intuition to dictate the progress that you make. So important that we just stop when we hear something and we just check in with ourselves and we ask ourselves if that actually makes sense. You know, for years, Don's been teaching people from stage. There are things that are true, there are things that are truer, and there are things that are truest. And so depending on what level of truth that we feel when we hear something, then, you know, that's going to either allow it to compound itself and cement itself within us, and we move up to a state of truer truth, and then we move up to the highest state, which is truest truth. But without that ability to filter information that, you know, may sound off, it doesn't quite resonate, doesn't quite make sense, I mean, those are the things that we should not be embracing. And, you know, none more so is this highlighted than in the medical world, where, you know, doctors are just arbitrarily just prescribing and diagnosing and, you know, getting people in for checkups, and people just become so lost in that world because they're not sticking to their gut and their intuition when it comes to taking care of themselves. And so we need to trust that. So here's my question to you. What is it that you want to create? What is it that you want to create, and what's holding you back? And I would subscribe to you that it's one of those four things. It's either something that's happened in your past, it's an addiction that you have that you find it really difficult to break through. It's a fear. You have a fear that if you go down a certain path, things won't work out, you won't be loved, or the outcome won't be there. Maybe you'll lose everything, who you're going to upset, or you're buying too much into the opinions of others. And those four things can each in their own right be debilitating. They can each be debilitating. And it just takes disruption in terms of the actions we take. And I'm going to share with you some tips for that, so that we can move away from all of that negativity and move forward with positive momentum. So as we all know, our mind creates our emotions, which is our feelings, and our feelings dictate our behaviors, and the behaviors that we follow on a daily basis ultimately dictate the outcomes for our life. And I've experienced that in my own life through some of the examples I've given you. I've experienced it certainly in my relationship, in my 21-year marriage. I've experienced it in my raising my kids. I've experienced it in my own personal goals. I've experienced it in my business. I've experienced it in my finances as well. And so the Holy Grail is for us to find ways that we can know what we want, step into that with a degree of action, and then repeat and repeat and repeat until it just becomes habit, and we start to really create the life that we want. So there's 7 ways or 7 steps to creating momentum that I sort of definitely have lived by and have subscribed to for many, many years. And the first is that we need to identify the source of our pain, or the source of our suffering, or the source of our tension. What is the biggest source of stress that you have in your life right now? Because whatever that source is, if you're going to identify that, there's a really, really good chance that the ripple effect of that source of stress, the ripple effect that that's having on your emotions, how you feel every day, how you show up for those around you, the impact on the relationships to those you love, maybe on your work, your ability to achieve great things in your career or your business. I would put it to you that source of stress is the most important thing that you need to address right now, because quite often stress is something that sits within us, but if we just go through our life and we don't really pay attention to it, it takes a hold of us, and usually it takes a big event of some kind for us to actually wake the hell up. But stress can be something that is relatively innocuous as well, that just becomes a part of us, and we just think it's part of our identity, it's part of who we are. And again, so we've just got to be able to disrupt that pattern, because there's a really good chance that if you don't have everything you want in life right now, the source of it is the biggest source of your stress. And so you need to identify what that is. Is it a lack of belief? Is it some form of overwhelm? Is it not knowing what to do? Are you listening to too many people? You know, is there too much complexity? When things are complex, they're probably not true. Complexity is always, always the enemy of execution. So, you know, all of those things are natural emotions that we all feel from time to time. I get stressed myself from time to time. I've got ways that I deal with that. But every time I find that I'm losing myself and just not getting through my day with the right amount of productivity, or I'm not feeling great, or I'm having some kind of a challenge in my family life, in my personal business life, you know, I need to just stop, reset, identify the source of the most stress, and then really focus on unpacking and dealing with that particular thing. So that's number one, identify the biggest source of stress that you have. There are ways that you can release stress. For me, the thing I love to do the most is just to practice intentional breathing. You know, we breathe hundreds of thousands of times every single day, and we do it subconsciously. And, you know, we can survive days without food. We can survive, you know, hours without water, or even days without water, but we can't survive very, very long without air. And so air is something we take for granted, but specifically breathing. And, you know, I've done a lot of yoga over the years, obviously through my, you know, martial arts training. There's a lot of attention paid to breath work. So that's why I like to refer to it as intentional breathing. So I encourage you every single day, whenever there's stress in your life and you can't quite identify the source of it, number one is to identify where the biggest source is coming from. And then number two is to go and find a quiet space away from your typical environment and just practice releasing the tension through conscious breath. Conscious deep breath work really helps to relieve anxiety, stress. It helps you to relieve tension, brings oxygen into your brain so that you can start to think more clearly as well. So that would be the number one. Being really conscious of your environment is so important. And so, you know, if you're finding that you're just not making any progress, you're finding that you want to lose weight, but you just can't seem to do it, you find that you've tried everything and failed, a lot of it has probably got to do with who you're listening to, what you're allowing to infiltrate your mind. And so that's the time when, if you're not getting results, you've got to stop and you've got to say, okay, where can I find a new radio frequency? Where can I find a source of new information that's going to inspire me? And it could be as simple as you're just lazy, you know, and then all you need is a dose of inspiration to get your ass off the couch and moving, you know. But the point is that whatever it is that works for you to get you moving forward is really the key. And the environment, the atmosphere we create is so important. So that's what I would say to you there. Just ensure that your environment, what you're listening to, who you're dialed into, you're really, really conscious of that. The next step would be to create clarity. Now, you've got to get clear on what you want now and make it measurable. If it's to get off medication, okay, set a time frame. You know, don't go cold turkey. You know, wean yourself off it. It might be 3 months, it might be 6 months, a time frame that's comfortable for you. Obviously, you need to do a bunch of things that, you know, safely around that in terms of your diet and lifestyle that are going to support that process. But set a measurable target, you know, because when you measure and you set targets and you schedule things, they tend to become real. They tend to become part of your subconscious. And even to this day, I still schedule my daily workouts. I put them into my iCal. So my, you know, 5:30 a.m. workouts, I put them in, even though it happens pretty much every day. I still put them into my calendar because it's just a discipline that infiltrates my mindset and my emotional state that, you know, it allows me not to negotiate with myself. So whatever it is you're trying to overcome, so be it getting off medication, be it losing weight, be it improving your relationship, you want to set little yardsticks and timeframes. If it's losing weight, make it measurable. I want to lose 5 kilos by, you know, the next 60 days. I want to lose 10 kilos within the next 6 months. Make it realistic, but make it measurable. So getting really clear on what it is that you want to create. Could be in your finances. You know, I want to save, you know, $10,000 within the next 6 months so that I've got a little bit of a buffer. things like that, rather than just saying, oh, look, I really should save more, or I really should lose some weight. The universe conspires when you've got clarity. So, there's this thing called grace. We don't know whether it's a higher power or whatever it is, but when you're clear on what you want and you give energy to that thing, there's a thing called grace that just tends to show up to really help you move towards that thing. Nobody knows what it is, but it's just a reality and a fact of life. It's a universal law of life, but it only happens once you're clear on what you want. Number 3 is to know your why, And the why is really the juice, okay? So what we've done so far is we've identified our main source of stress, and I've given you a few tips on how to deal with stress. And then we've gone, step number 2 is all about developing clarity. So it's all about getting to a point where what it is that we want and how do we make that measurable? How do we make that in a quantifiable, achievable target for us to follow and move towards? So step number 3 is to know your why. Now, why is it so important to have a reason to do something? Because it's what gives something juice. It's what gives it energy. When the inevitable challenges come up, it's the thing that's going to help you keep going. It's the thing that's going to help you overstep, the wall or the pothole or the thing that's showing up in front of you. And it could be you're just, a moment of weakness in your own mind. But if you can tap into the why, and a great example is always people who are trying to give up smoking. For somebody who's smoked for 20, 30 years to try and give up smoking, it's probably one of the most difficult things you could ever do. So how do you do that? Well, the only way to, help somebody to give up smoking who's been, addicted to nicotine for 30 years is to create leverage. And the only way you're going to create leverage is for them to be really clear on some of the really bad shit that's going to happen for them in their life if they don't stop. And it may not be their own health that is a big enough reason for them to stop. But, if you can say to them, well, you're not going to see your grandkids or your children grow up, those kinds of things, or you're not going to be able to enjoy the fruits of all of your labor that you've worked so hard to create over the last, 30, 40, 50 years. So those are the things that we need to get really clear on that are going to give us the leverage in order to keep sticking with the program when the inevitable going gets tough. So knowing what your why is just so important. Number 4 is to set simple targets. So simple incremental targets. Don always used to say to people, just take baby steps, because if you run before you can walk, you're going to fall over and crash. And it's just so true. You can't have a baby learn to walk before they can crawl. And it's just a simple analogy, but the same thing applies to anything major that we're trying to change in our life and create momentum for. And so it's so important we break things down into bite-sized pieces. The only way to eat an elephant is one simple bite at a time. Otherwise, it just becomes overwhelming. The task at hand becomes just too much, and chances are we give ourselves permission not to do anything. And so you have to get really real on what it is that you want, why you want it, and then break that thing down into simple bite-sized pieces so that you can incrementally go after it step by step. Because the beautiful thing is that when you go after a particular target, and this is why I love martial arts, is because they have a grading system. And so they basically step you through incrementally a progressive ladder for you before you get to black belt. So, you don't have a situation where you can go from being white to black belt, in 1 year. It's not like that. You need to get to blue belt, then you need to green belt, then you need to orange belt, then you need to, so there's all these steps. And so, for me, it's been a really great metaphor for my life that I've carried with me, is that, anytime there's a big project at hand, to actually break that down into bite-sized steps. And a lot of the tours we used to do with Don, and I think back to the early days when we risked everything to make that happen, Inga and I, we basically didn't look past, that first city. Every time we were just like thinking about that first city, how can we deliver maximum value to that audience? How do we get the result? And everything was centered around just those incremental targets. rather than the big picture. And invariably, by doing that, we're able to put all our energy and focus into that one thing, and invariably we've got the result that we were looking for. So step number 5 is, of course, to take action. And, this is where things can get tough, because we can do all the preparation, we can do all the mental stuff, we can do all the emotional shifts that we need to make, but ultimately we've got to take action. And that sometimes takes courage, and sometimes it's painful. But without action, nothing happens. Life rewards action. Action is everything. And so once you've gotten clear on what you want, you've released the stress, you've got a why, and you've broken things down into simple, measurable steps, the next thing for you to do is the hardest part, which is to actually step into that and to take action. Okay? And so no matter how small, you need to take action if you want to get the result. Once you do that and you repeat that and you do that again and you repeat that, repetition is the mother of skill. So the more you do something on a daily basis, it could be a morning habit that you should be doing. Instead of getting up first thing and having your coffee in the morning, get up and drink a liter of water. That one simple habit, which is hard to do in the beginning, if you were to just step in from your normal routine that you've been doing for years and just resolve that, look, the first thing I'm going to do every single morning, I'm going to wake up and I'm going to drink 1 liter of water. And if that was just the project at hand for the next 30 days, I'm telling you how you would feel at the end of that 30 days would just give you so much, so much clarity of mind. You'd improve so many things physically in your health. You'd prove to yourself, how such a simple little thing can give you the impetus to go forward and add another layer to that. And that's why we've got to break everything down into simple bite-sized pieces so that we can take that action, that it doesn't seem overwhelming, and that we can repeat it on an ongoing basis until we create momentum. So guys, I'm going to wrap today. I just wanted to give you those tips, but just once again, those seven tips for creating momentum. Number 1 is to identify the biggest source of your stress. Number 2 is to release the tension that is around that stress, and it could be to do with your business, it could be to do with your physical health, it could be to do with your relationship. Those are typically the things that tend to stress us out the most. We need to get really clear on our why it is that we need to change this thing, because that's the thing that's going to invariably help us to move forward. We need to break things down into bite-sized pieces, and then finally we need to take action. So I hope you got something from that this morning. It's an area that I love to talk about, because it's something that's near and dear to me, that I've had to engage in so many times in my own life. Whenever I've had these roadblocks where I feel like, shit, I'm going nowhere, I just tap back into those things. What's my stress? How do I release that tension? Why do I need to improve this situation? What are the action steps? Let's break it down. Let's get them on paper and then move forward in bite-sized pieces. So I want to thank you for tuning in, and that's the Friday live stream for today. And I look forward to seeing you next time on my Facebook page. I hope you got something from that. Have a great Friday. Have a great weekend. I really appreciate you. Take care.